in terms of herd mentality, there was a talk that Vijay Govindaran, who's famous for the reverse innovation thinking from Tuck, gave in about 2009. And in it he said, the people who are going to make money right now on the investment side are the ones who are prepared to run counter to what everyone else is doing. So he said, the very time to be making the disruptive bets is when everyone is hunkered down, right? It is when investors are very afraid to use their capital well. And I think the converse is true also, which is that sometimes when we want to, and this goes to your point about bubble mentalities, when we want to be most careful is when everyone's throwing money at something. One of the, I think the bugaboos, if I'm using that term correctly, that bedevils entrepreneurs, and this fits right into that, what did you call it, unjustifiable optimism, is that when you see something great, right, then you want to do something similar. And, we all, leak the word disruption, from our ears, but don't put that in the film. What a terrible metaphor. We all live and breathe disruption. We talk about it all the time. But I think what makes disruption so difficult is that it really does require not only the mindset, but also the structural capability to make investments, both as an entrepreneur, when obviously you're investing sweat equity and often your own resources, and as a third-party investor. I want to highlight two comments that were made at the celebration, actually. Excuse me, names are escaping me right now. The former Pipeline CEO who did the keynote.
Greg Galvin? Or
No. At any rate, I asked him a question yesterday during the panel, and I said, so the moderator, Andrew Berger, had asked him this great question about where they were going to be and their future. And I said, so you guys patented basically a business model innovation, right, which was the price being offered by the hotel seeker. And if there's a next shift, how are you making bets on that? And the answer he gave, I thought, was very illuminating. It was a good answer. He said, look, we've created a venture fund, all the smart things to be doing. But he also said, we're not really set up, we're not really structured to make certain kinds of bets, right? And let me actually move off of that, because I don't want to misrepresent what he said, and talk about a fascinating interview I did with someone who's made a lot of money in the cable media industry recently, a guy called Steve Brookstein, who's a colleague. I've created these innovation courses at FIT. At any rate, we were talking about how HBO effectively subsidizes other cable channels in their revenues, right? So you have to buy through all these channels you don't watch, being general here, in order to get that HBO content you really want. And if there's any question about people really wanted that content, I believe it was the head of Time Warner was quoted recently as saying, last year, as saying that the piracy leadership of Game of Thrones was better than an Emmy. That was the quote, better than an Emmy. And so you have this content, and you start to ask the question, and this is Steve's point, could HBO take a model that the NFL has used and essentially take its premium content and slice it in 4 or 5 different ways at different price points, right? Classic price differentiation, so that you're paying more than you pay for HBO Go or something like that right now for the really premium stuff. Think some of what you'd find on a DVD, but richer and more exciting for the big fans, extra episodes, that sort of thing, and storylines. And then you have other fans who are getting a piece of the content. Now, HBO, presumably, if it's true that you're paying for content you don't want as part of their fee in effect, they could make better margins by doing this. So just imagine for a second that every fan of their content had a digital-only subscription, that they went wire neutral, right? Now, why can't they do that? Well, the fundamental structural reason is that they have this annuity, which is subscription fees, right? Why do I say all this? Because, it's so easy for us to say, how did Kodak miss digital, right? But often it is structurally the case that you can't make these bets. So if I may have gotten a little too far into the anecdotes, but I think the point here is that it is not only our psychology that prevents us from moving away from that herd, from taking bets against the current tendency. It's also often structural. And so to go back where we started, and I talk about having that mission of broadening the pool of people who can innovate, part of that really is to change the way potential innovators are educated. Part of it's to change the risk calculus, right? Meaning to essentially make it possible for more people to explore and experiment and fail and have a chance to do it again. That is not only a cultural thing, which it is also a structural piece. I had a student comment on one of my U.S. News and World Reports articles recently, and that student said, "Professor, you missed the key point, which is that we can't afford to be entrepreneurs if our grade will suffer." This really gave me pause, right? And I think that I think we're doing an incredible disservice if that's how we've set up the game, right? To assume you're going to be able to plug into somebody else's solution and collect your weekly check. I think that more and more, even if you're working for an established company, you will need to show that you can generate new solutions because your employer depends upon that. And, Toffler talked about the increasing throughput of experience 20, 30 years ago, right? But that is accelerated to mind-blowing extent. So those, whether it's an entrepreneur or a student of entrepreneurship, I often hope things bleed together at places like Cornell. If the student or the entrepreneur is not prepared to explore, experiment, and otherwise deal with change in these ways, then we're simply going to miss the boat. And so, look, there will be some investors who have a herd mentality, but how great are their returns going to be? If you want to, again, it's that wave that you see coming before all the value has been baked into it.